Just wanna be with you, King of glory, King of glory, come and fill this place. Just wanna be with you, just wanna be with you.
Giving to your local church should be easy, and with Tithely, it is. Just download the app and securely register your credit or debit card. You're done. Now you can give during church services or anywhere else. Use Tithely to give a one-time gift or set up recurring donations. It's that simple. It's fast, secure, and easy to use. Tithely, the simplest way to give to your local church.
Newsoul Ribera, wherever you are, however you're joining with me right now, and you're joining with us online, welcome. I'm so glad that you're with us today. I'm Pastor Steve. If you don't know who I am, I'm the pastor of Newsoul Ribera, and I'm just so glad that you're with us today. I just want to give you a special kind of breaking invitation. If you've been joining with us online for a while, but you've never been with us in person, and you're thinking like, I'm waiting for the right moment, this is your moment. Come and join us. I know you're probably watching this on a Sunday, so join us next weekend. Come in person. If you can be with us, join us. This is great, and we'll continue to do this, but you were never designed to do church this way. If you're a Jesus follower, you were never asked by Jesus to listen to messages and pray alone by yourself. Like, that's all what it means to follow Jesus. You were called to be part of a community. Even Jesus did life with 12 other people. And so, be connected, get connected. If you're waiting for whatever reason, you got disconnected, maybe something happened at your old church, or you got sick, or COVID, come on back. Nothing replaces being together in person. Let's do life. I want to do life with you. Will you do life with me? Will you come and join us and be part of our community? Or if you can't get to us, go back to the church that you were at before. I don't know what happened if you can, but if not, I'll give you some recommendations wherever you are, but get connected. That's the most important thing. We're going to continue to do church online, but get connected. That's my special message to you today. We're going to repeat the content from last weekend. So if you have not seen the content today, this is going to be new to you. Maybe you want to hear it again. I think it's super important. It's a message from the Apostle John about love. And I don't know, it couldn't be more timely than right now. So if you want to hear it again and have never heard it, enjoy this content. If you think you got it down and you're ready to move on, then enjoy the rest of your day. But in any event, I'm just really glad that you're with us today, and I hope to see you in person really soon.
Hi, I'm Jackie, and I want to welcome you to Newsoul Ribera Church Online. Wherever you are and whoever you are, we are so glad to have you with us today. Please wave or say hello in the chat so we can see you. If you haven't been to church in person in a while or ever, we would like to invite you to church on Sundays at 10 a.m. at Newsoul Ribera. We hope this song encourages you. I'll talk to you again in a few minutes.
Christ is my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand when everything around me is shaking. I've never been more glad that I put my faith in Jesus, 'cause He's never let me down. He's faithful through generations. So why would He fail now? He won't. He won't. I've still got joy in chaos. I've got peace that makes no sense. So I won't be going under. I'm not held by my own strength, 'cause I built my life on Jesus, and He's never let me down. He's faithful in every season. So why would He fail now? He won't. No, He won't. He won't fail. He won't fail. He won't. No, no, no. He won't. He won't fail. He won't fail. Christ is my firm foundation, the rock on which I stand when everything around me is shaking. I've never been more glad that I put my faith in Jesus, 'cause He's never let me down. He's faithful through generations. So why would He fail now? He won't. No, no, He won't. He won't fail. He won't fail. No. Rain came, wind blew, my house was built on you. I'm safe with you. I'm gonna make it through. Rain came, wind
part of our worships too. What we do with our money tells us what we value or what or who we trust with our lives. When you give 1% of your income to God each week, you're putting His kingdom first in your life. Your generosity is what allows us to come into your home or your car or your phone or wherever you are. Not just for you, but for so many others, like in Pecos, Las Vegas, my hometown, Albuquerque, Los Lunas, Villanueva, Gonzales Ranch, Lobato, even South Carolina and Oklahoma. When you give to Newsoul Ribera, you are investing in God's work in the world and especially in the Valley. You can text to give by texting the word blessed to 94000, or you can give online by clicking in the link below or going to newsoulribera.com. Or you can give by mail. Our address is on the screen in the comment section below. If you haven't yet, text someone the link and invite them to join us. If you're doing something in another room or looking at your Facebook or Instagram feed, come back to this page. Okay, let's do this.
I spent much of my life trying to avoid people. I sat in the back when I was in a class or a crowded room, or as far away from the crowd as I could. At first, I guess it began as because I was the new kid, because I was different and I felt insecure. I had so much fear of rejection. Eventually, that fear led to isolation and loneliness. I didn't really love people. I didn't even like many people. I'm an introvert by nature and learned to like being by myself. One of the reasons I loved basketball and music so much was because I could do both while alone. And loving being alone isn't necessarily a harmful thing, but with it, I also developed an addiction to being in control. Being in control of my own little world. And in this little world that I created, I didn't have to consider anyone else's opinions. I didn't have to consider their feelings or do what made them happy at all. I used to think that I had social anxiety or was born antisocial. I would see other people who I knew that were social butterflies and like small talk at parties. But, not me, because I was deep and different. I wasn't shallow like all those other party people who like to amuse themselves with foolish things like laughter and friendship. As I matured, I made a disturbing discovery about myself. The reason I didn't like being around other people is that other people didn't do what I wanted them to do. For some reason, they didn't get the memo. They didn't realize that they were supposed to operate on my schedule and do what I wanted, when I wanted, and how I wanted. I discovered that I didn't like being around people because relationships are messy and complicated. Because when I did things with people, my life didn't always go the way I wanted it to go. And I didn't like that. I wanted to get my way all the time. But it was easier for me to just say I had social anxiety or I was an introvert or I wasn't a people person than to admit the truth to myself that I was a self-centered jerk who liked to be in control all the time. This led to me being very alone and feeling very alone. I felt like an outsider all the time, even in my own family sometimes. What I didn't realize is that my antisocial behavior actually hurt other people. It was always surprising to me because I was trying to avoid them, not hurt them. It wasn't personal. I just didn't like them very much. But I didn't want them to know. Now, them knowing and me telling them, now that would be mean. But I would do the loving thing and keep my dislike of them to myself. I thought they would forget about me and just leave me alone. But instead, they felt rejected by me and judged by me. I couldn't seem to disconnect myself from people and relationships no matter how hard I tried. Didn't people know that I was trying to seek God by staying away from people? And then there were times in my life where I wanted nothing to do with God and still ended up hurting people. What I discovered was that I was desperate for real human connection as long as the humans weren't connected to it. And then one day, I stopped running from people. I stopped avoiding people. I opened my eyes to the truth that was in front of me all the time. That all the good in my life, all of it, was there because of people. People who were vulnerable enough with me to open themselves to me and love me. Since then, I have experienced life in a brand new way. I learned that, well, honestly, the deepest longing of every human soul is to be loved. That what I was looking for in my own crazy way was love. I was so desperate for love that it made me afraid to be rejected because I didn't think I could take it. I wanted to be loved for who I really was instead of who I wanted others to think I was. All of us want a love like that. To be known and loved for who we really are and not just who others think we are. Maybe you're like me and you don't always like to admit that. Maybe you're different. I don't know. Some of us seek it through romantic relationships, marriage, family. We think that if we get married or have kids that we will finally know real, authentic love. We seek it in success or our careers or maybe in fitness, desperately longing for acceptance, to not be rejected, to be loved. Many of you have been deeply hurt or are hurting today because you still feel lonely even when you have all of those things. You feel like your soul is lifeless because you have been rejected, or feel deeply disappointed because you still have not received the love that you longed for and hoped for. Maybe you feel like you have never really been loved or experienced real love. If all you've known is rejection and abuse and violence, and not a moment of tenderness, of grace, of mercy, it's really hard, if not impossible, to love other people or even yourself. The Apostle John, the person whose writings we're looking at in this series, he writes that he experienced love, the kind of love that changed his life. Now, I know this is Church Online, and if all this talk about love makes you a little uncomfortable, and you're waiting for the teaching about God to finally begin, you have a lot in common with the Apostle John. When he first met Jesus as a young man, he wasn't interested in love, not at all. John didn't enter the pages of history as a man focused on love, but instead as someone who was angry and was standing up for what was right and for truth and for God. John was a man who experienced racism and injustice in the world and was ready for someone to do something about it. He wanted to finally find someone to give him the power to make his broken world right again. That's one of the reasons he began following Jesus. He was hoping Jesus would be that someone. John was tired of people getting away with rejecting other people. He wanted to make them pay for their discrimination and their corruption. The Greek doctor Luke writes about John's early days. Here's what Luke says. He says, "And Jesus sent messengers on ahead who went into a Samaritan village to get things ready for him. But people there did not welcome him. And when the disciples, James and John, saw this, they asked, 'Lord, do you want us to call fire down from heaven to destroy them?'" This is kind of like when you asked your parents, "Hey, Mom, do you want me to drive down to the store to pick up some eggs and milk for you?" What you really meant was, "Mom, I really want to get out of here and be independent and drive on my own, but it's your car. So I need permission, but this gives me a good excuse." James and John were saying, "Hey, we think the world would be better off without these people, and we think they deserve to die. But you, Jesus, have the firepower, so we need permission. But this gives us a good excuse." The Samaritans discriminated against them. They rejected them. They didn't want their kind in their town. And John and his brother James lost it. John wanted to teach those hate-filled people a lesson. He wanted to put them in their place. He wasn't going to allow them to get away with treating people like that. John wanted to cancel them permanently. And what's interesting is that John, at that time of his life, was sure that he was the hero in his story, while the Samaritans were the villains, including apparently their kids and babies and grandmas and dogs who would all get burned up in the firestorm from heaven he was planning. In John's mind, he felt qualified to make that judgment. They were bad people. He was a good person. They deserved to die. He deserved to live. John saw himself as a righteous, fighting for a righteous cause against the corruption in the world. Another way to say this is that John was self-righteous. Jesus didn't agree with John. Instead, Jesus corrected John. Here's what Luke says about it. He says, "But Jesus turned and rebuked them." He rebuked them, which means he strongly warned them in a way that would stop them. It's like what you do to your dog or your child when they're getting close to something that they need to stay away from. Hey, get away from there. Move back. Jesus was saying, if you think I agree with you on how to deal with being rejected and being discriminated against, you've missed it, John. If you believe that I have come to cancel people and condemn them and judge them and wipe them out, you are not correct. It's why Jesus nicknamed John and his brother James the sons of thunder. Now, I think we've said before, if you've been tracking with us, that would be an awesome name for a rock band. It's kind of an awesome nickname, kind of like Thor. All that's needed to make it sound cooler is the son of thunder and rock and roll. They were full of rage against the machine. They had anger against hate and corruption. What's interesting about John's story is that he didn't use that nickname on himself when he talks about his relationship to Jesus. The way John tells it, there was something in the way Jesus treated him that changed and transformed his identity and how he saw himself. Here's how John writes about himself arriving at the empty tomb of Jesus in his gospel, the Gospel of John, about Jesus. Here's what John writes. He's writing about himself. Here's what he says. He says, "So she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one Jesus loved, and said, 'They have taken the Lord out of the tomb and we don't know where they have put him.'" John's writing about himself. He called himself the disciple that Jesus loved. He didn't call himself the son of thunder, even though it's a cool nickname. He called himself the man, the follower of Jesus that Jesus loved. That's interesting. In his writings, John called himself that 5 different times. He saw himself as someone that Jesus loved. There was something about how Jesus treated him that changed how he saw himself. It shifted his identity. John writes something revolutionary about love here. And if what John says is true, then Jesus has redefined the whole idea of love forever. Here's what John says. John says, "This is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us." What is love? Having every right to be angry, being justified in your rage against the injustice done to you, and yet not repaying evil for evil, hate for hate, but repaying evil with good. This is what love is. Giving up what you want and what you deserve so that you can do good to someone else. Being right and the other person being wrong, and yet not condemning them, but enduring their pain for them. John is saying that Jesus redefines what love looks like, not with his words, but with what he did. How many times have you said, "Don't tell me that you love me, show me"? That's why Jesus came. That's what his life, his death on the cross, and his resurrection are all about. See, the wood on that cross was soaked in blood. Don't miss this. This is important. Blood-soaked crosses weren't unusual in the time of Jesus. All Roman crosses were soaked in blood. It's not the what of Jesus' cross that matters. It's the why. Jesus died for love. Love kept him on that cross, not for himself, but for you, and for the you next to you, and for the you are related to, and for the you that you disagree with, and for the you that has hurt you and that is your enemy, for the you that you will never meet. Jesus did what loving you required him to do. Jesus redefined love in every language, for every community and generation, in every race and culture, forever. Whatever definition of love you had before is old and outdated, if John is right, because Jesus has updated the definition of love. This is what love looks like. This is what love is. This is what love does. This is love. Love sacrifices. Love puts others first. Love isn't consumed with getting what it wants all the time. Love is fine with not getting its own way so that someone else can benefit. This is who love is. God is love. That's what John wrote in his letter. The Apostle John. God is love. I don't know what you've been told about God or what your experience has been like around people who say they speak on his behalf or who are Christians. But according to John, who actually was with Jesus in person, God is love. So if that hasn't been your experience around people who are supposed to represent God, I'm sorry. Love isn't a feeling. It's not a what, it's a who. The source of the universe isn't merely overwhelming power, endless resources, or ever-increasing knowledge and discovery. No. The origin and source of the universe, of this world, is love. Here's what John says. John says, whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. John is saying, if you don't love like Jesus loved, you don't know God. The evidence for knowing God isn't going to church or knowledge about God or worship or prayer. It's showing love to the people in your life. In fact, what John says is shocking because he used to be, remember, the son of thunder. He used to cancel people and write them off. John says something that is an indictment of the self-righteous, religious person that he used to be. This is what John says. He says, but if we say we love God and don't love each other, we are liars. We cannot see God. So how can we love God if we don't love the people we can see? John is saying, come on, let's be honest with ourselves. We like to talk about how much we love God or all that we do because we love God. But let's be honest, none of us have seen God. So when we're talking about loving God, it's this invisible entity. So if you haven't seen God, do you really believe that God exists? And if he does exist and you believe that, and he has created humans, all humans, in his image, on purpose, with purpose, and for a purpose, including the humans you don't like, including the humans you disagree with, including your boss and your ex and the person who's politically different than you, and the people who tailgate you on the road. Do you believe that God created them in His image? Really? Because you can see them. And if John were here today, he might say, now you should speak up for those without a voice, like the unborn. That's loving. But what about those who are already born? Do you speak up for their rights? Are you concerned for justice for them? For the already born people that you can see as much as you are for the unborn people? If you think that you are a loving person because you fight for the lives of the unborn who you can't see, but you ignore fighting for the lives of those already born who you can see, doesn't that make you a bit dishonest? If John were talking in a church today, he might say, do you fight for the lives of people that you know as much as for those you don't know in some remote region of the world on a mission field? John is saying if you really love God, you will love the people you can see as much as you love the God and the people that you don't see. And if that wasn't offensive enough, John says something that probably offends everybody. Here's what he says. If you hate each other, you are murderers. And we know murderers do not have eternal life. Murder seems a bit intense, right? I'm not going to ask you if you've been tempted to murder this week because I don't think I want to know the answer. But what is murder? Some of you are into true crime podcasts and shows. You watch Dateline and investigation shows. So what's murder? Murder grows out of hate. And what is hate? At its core, hate is connected to controlling other people. Why? Because you can only hate someone that you can't control. When someone is doing something you don't like and you are powerless to stop them, that's where hate is born. In those true crime shows you watch, murder is always the solution to the hate problem, right? Murder is canceling someone in the extreme. So is murder okay if you have good intentions? It's like when the political candidate who enrages you wins the election. Maybe you think, if they just, like suddenly passed away peacefully, like in their sleep, sweetly, I wouldn't hate that. Or that person making you angry on the road, would it be so bad if they went away? John is saying that when we try to control other adults, when we try to change them or manipulate them, we are hating them, even if our intentions are good. And hate, according to John, makes us murderers. If that's what we really want, but most of us would never actually say it or even think it, it's because we all have, if we're honest, an inner control freak inside. If you're honest today, isn't there someone in your life you really, really want to force them to change? Come on. Isn't there someone in your life that you would like to fix and make them do what you want them to do? It's natural for us to try to make other adults do what we want them to do. Our ex, our family, those people who are different than you. And murder is how humans have gained the ultimate control over people and events, right? Murder is the easiest way to finally take care of the problem person who you can't control once and for all. Murder doesn't require patience, sacrifice, kindness. Why do people hate each other? For all kinds of reasons, right? We don't like what they did in the past, what they're doing now, or what they might do in the future. So murder is how we get our own way and we work a situation out to our advantage. And John says when you hate people, even for good reasons, you prove that you don't have eternal life. Because God isn't a control freak. He doesn't control, coerce, force, or manipulate people. There's someone else who started doing that, but it wasn't God. John says, love comes from God. You might be an atheist today. Maybe you're deconstructing your faith and don't even know if you believe in the Bible. Maybe you've had it with preachers or even church. So you question if God is real or if he does exist. And if he does exist, how do you experience him? Because, man, the humans, they mess everything up, right? The ones who wrote the Bible, the people who run churches today on TV, famous and getting rich, all that stuff. I get that. But John is saying that if you've ever experienced real love in your life, you've experienced God. Maybe it was the random kindness of a stranger on the side of the road, or the patience of a teacher or a coach. Maybe it's the love you feel for someone else. Maybe the places where you should have experienced real love have disappointed you and even hurt you. But John is saying that in every moment of love in your life, every one of those moments of love have been moments where you have experienced God. It's kind of like when you say, look at the wind. It's crazy outside right now. Well, have you ever seen wind? What does it look like? You can only see the impact of the wind. And that's how it is with God. When you experience love, you're coming into contact with God. No matter where you go or how far you might want to run away from him, when you feel love, you experience God. And the truth is, the day that you no longer need love is the day you will no longer need God. John, the son of thunder, who wanted to call down fire and kill people, remember? Because he was over them, he had had enough, he had it. He wanted to cancel them. Now, after knowing Jesus and seeing him redefine love and life, here's what John writes. He says, "Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. And everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God." John is saying, I've seen love. I've experienced love. And I'm telling you that love changes everything. So let's love each other. This is what life is about. Do you really want to be deep spiritually? I mean deep. Do you want to be a real Christian? Are you tired of the fake and the corrupt? Are you hungry for the eternal and the incorruptible? Then John says, then love. Because when you love people well, you are born of God and you know God. John says, anyone who does not love remains in death. Jesus didn't come to extend your existence with bonus time after your heart stops beating, your brain activity stops, and your lungs no longer fill up with air. Jesus came to give you life, to make you fully alive. Maybe your soul feels worn out and empty right now. So kind of dead. John says that anyone who does not love stays dead. Even if you pray, even if you attend church, even if you read scripture, even if you sing, don't miss this. Here's what John says. We know that we have passed from death to life because we love each other. Anyone who does not love remains in death. See, that's how you know that you've changed. Not by your political views or your bumper sticker, not by how many Christian words you use, but do you love people? Do you love people you used to hate? You might say, well, I lost that loving feeling. Oh, that loving feeling. I've lost that loving feeling. Now it's gone, gone, gone. And you know the rest. But is John talking about feelings here? Remember, Jesus redefined love. John says, this is love, not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. John is saying, don't get it twisted. Love is action. It's doing something, not feeling something. It's not a side hug and a smile. It's not tolerance, mild tolerance or indifference. That's not what God did. That's not what Jesus did. God didn't condemn us and give up on us when we wanted nothing to do with him. When we were lost and our thinking was crazy and misguided. God didn't say, you know what, you guys are sick. Something's wrong with you. Fine, be that way. Instead, God was patient and kind. God moved in our direction. He sacrificed for our good. He put himself last and us first. Jesus humbled himself so that he could restore and reconcile our relationship with him. John says, since God so loved us, we ought to love one another because no one has ever seen God. But if we love one another, God lives in us and his love is made complete in us. Maybe you were taught that if you want to be full of the presence of God, that you needed to go to some conference or some church event with some special teaching or special speaker, or worship service with miracles and music and crying and people telling you what your future is going to be. Maybe you heard that Christians need to love, but you're like, yeah, of course, but that's just one of many things Christians should be focused on. But John is saying something different here. John is saying, if you want to be full of the presence of God, is that what you want? Love people. Love your family. Love strangers. Love your enemies. When you love, God is alive in you. Do you want a life filled with God? This is what John says. He was with Jesus. Love people. Love well. John says, God is love. Whoever lives in love lives in God, and God in them. Now, John writes something here that many of you, if you grew up around church, have heard used as a scripture verse to memorize when you're alone watching a scary movie or you're just really afraid. And that is, perfect love drives out fear, or perfect love casts out fear. People tell you to claim it or memorize it to make you feel better. So maybe you claimed it one night when you were watching a scary movie, but you were still scared. And make no mistake, God does want to be your help when you're afraid. That's true. But God wasn't trying to give you a verse to help you not be afraid in a dark house all alone on Halloween when he wrote this. Do you still find yourself afraid of being punished? Do you have fear of punishment in your life? Are you afraid of being punished at work or by the government? Are you afraid of being punished by God? Maybe you've been baptized and you prayed a prayer of salvation, or you've taken communion and you've done all the rituals you can think of to make sure that your fear is taken away so that you're not afraid of dying and meeting God. You're not afraid of being punished by God. Here's what John says about that. He says, a real love for others will chase those worries away. The thought of being punished is what makes us afraid. It shows we have not really learned to love. You want to have peace, so you're no longer afraid of being punished? Learn how to love better. According to John, that is the way forward to be free from the torment of fear in your heart and your mind. Learning to love others. Maybe that's what happened to John too. He went from being the son of thunder to the disciple that Jesus loved. Something about the love of Jesus changed me, just like it changed John. I was around church all my life, but didn't embrace the love of God until later in my life. Christianity to me was all about rules and rituals, sacraments and traditions, even when churches were trying hard not to have any of those things. I guess that's what I thought God was like. A bunch of really great rules and important rules that I agreed with, but that I kept breaking. Expectations that I couldn't live up to. And every time I thought of God, it was a reminder of what a complete mess I was. And then I realized that God wasn't like that at all. I experienced the love of God in my brokenness and in my shame. I experienced how Jesus saw me at my worst and he saw value in me. How he never gave up on me, even when I had given up on myself. Even when others should have given up on me. He never judged me or condemned me. He searched for me. He found me. He welcomed me. He embraced me. He saw greatness in me when all I saw was failure. When I fall, I hear a voice. Yes, I hear voices. And it's a voice that says, it's not over yet. You can still win the race. Keep going. I'm here. Today, I'm the guy that Jesus loved. He loves me even when I don't love me. Maybe you've heard this talk today and are thinking, I don't know if I can live a life of love. I don't have it in me. And John would probably agree with you. I know I didn't have it in me. John says that we can't really love other people. Don't miss this. Until we decide to embrace the love of God ourselves, personally and completely. John says, we love because he first loved us. If you struggle loving people, have you ever fully experienced the love of God for yourself? And I don't mean in a Jesus loves the little children, all the little children of the world kind of way. It's almost like experiencing the sun by reading about the sun in a book or seeing a poster in your classroom. That's watching a video about it. That's experiencing it one way. But then there is standing outside in the middle of the summer for 3 hours. It's a different kind of experiencing and knowing. Has there ever been a moment in your life where you decided to embrace how much your Heavenly Father really loves you? Or are you still resisting it? It's like you're at the door of a great restaurant and the food looks and smells delicious. And you see all the people going in and they're loving it, man. It looks amazing. They're smiling and they're laughing and they're just eating it up. But you're just watching them like, that looks great. You haven't gone inside. Have you noticed that when someone gives you an amazing gift or does something incredible for you, it's not always easy for you to accept? Have you noticed that? Why is that? Maybe when it comes to God's love and accepting his love in your life, maybe you resist it because you're afraid of intimacy. Because receiving love creates connection, and you're afraid to let God be close to all the parts of you that you don't want him to see. Because if you're like me, you only want him to see the nice parts of you. Maybe you don't want to give up control in your life. You know, when you give something to someone else, you're in control. But when you receive, you're vulnerable and open. Maybe you don't want to feel like you owe God anything, or like there's strings attached. Like if you ever fully embrace God's love for you, you have to stop enjoying life. And you need to do something religious, or give money, or get up early to pray, or give up smoking. The Apostle John learned that embracing God's love isn't a trade. It's not a trick to get you to behave better. John said, "See what great love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God." And that is what we are. This is why John called himself the disciple that Jesus loved. He got it. He saw it. John realized that in spite of his self-righteous murdering tendencies, Jesus was patient with him. Even when he was immature, Jesus was kind to him. Jesus never boasted about how righteous he was compared to how unrighteous John was. Jesus didn't easily lose his temper with John. Jesus didn't keep a record of all of John's sins and his wrongdoings. John he realized that Jesus wasn't trying to manipulate him or use him for his own advantage. Jesus trusted John with the future of his kingdom, even when John didn't even trust himself. And Jesus protected John and stood up for him by giving his own life and dying for him. John made the decision to accept that he really was a treasured and cherished child of the Creator of the universe, that he couldn't earn it and couldn't deserve it ever. John said, "Since God so loved us," so loved us. Have you ever been so loved in your life? Some of you wonder if that's even possible. Will you have the courage to believe, like John, that you are so loved right now? John says that's where loving people begins. Deciding to accept and embrace the love of God in your own life. Dear friends, since God so loved us, John writes, we ought to also love one another. The Apostle John would say, this has been my experience. If he was here instead of me, he would tell you I was with Jesus in person. I touched him, I heard him, I talked to him. I saw him live, I saw him die, and I saw him come back to life again. I saw how the whole story played out, and I'm telling you that this is what you and I were designed for, to be loved and to love. We'll stop there for today. Don't miss next week as we continue this series looking at this letter from the Apostle John.
Well, that's it for this week. I hope you all have a great week.